Garten of BanBan. Truly, one of the video games of all time. Countless hours were put into the making of this game's merchandise page, with perhaps a few seconds devoted to the game itself. You may be under the impression that this game is merely the latest cash grab in the line of mascot horror games designed for easily frightened children. In this video, we will be taking a deep dive into the bone-chilling lore behind the Garten of BanBan game series, but be warned, what I'm about to tell you is deeply disturbing. If you are the type of person that is terrified of empty rooms or says that Star Wars The Clone Wars is dark, I advise you to click off this video. Alright, let's get started. If you aren't familiar with the basic premise of Garten of BanBan, allow me to explain. The series is developed by the mysterious duo known as the Euphoric Brothers, and the first game was released on January 6, 2023. This was extremely upsetting to other game developers because it took away any chance they had of winning the Game of the Year award. The game takes place in a location known as BanBan's kindergarten, with BanBan being one of many colorful mascots of the facility. However, in a twist that no one saw coming, the mascots are actually evil and try to hunt the player down. The first entry features two of these mascots, one of which only appears in a cutscene at the end of the game. The other character in the game is called the Opila bird and can only actually kill the player in one short section of the game. Judging by the bird's eyes being reddened, it seems to be under the influence of drugs. The rest of the gameplay consists of doing simple puzzles such as remembering colors and collecting various objects, which is either a hint at a possible conspiracy with YouTube Kids channels or indicates that the developers were unable to solve more complicated puzzles than this. Now, you may be wondering where BanBan is, and while he is not present as an actual character in the first game, he does appear in drawing form on the walls, saying things such as, "Your pancreas is mine." More importantly, BanBan and the other mascots are also present in the official Garten of BanBan merchandise, which strangely was immediately linked in the main menu when the game was released. I will get back to this point later. There is also obligatory hidden lore, mostly in the form of notes which are supposedly made by a child who writes in perfect sans serif font. I could go into the details of the lore itself, but this would probably mean putting in more effort than the people who wrote it did. What is far more concerning is the presence of a cassette tape as one of the secret clues of the game. At first glance, it does not make any sense why there would be a tape when the game is explicitly shown to take place in 2016, making the tape an extremely outdated piece of technology. One possible explanation is that the developers forgot they weren't making a Five Nights at Freddy's clone and accidentally included this in the game. However, I believe it is more likely that this is evidence of Garten of BanBan being linked to Project MKUltra. If you are not familiar, Project MKUltra was an illegal human experimentation program run by the CIA from the 1950s to 1970s. The goal of the program was to develop methods or substances that could be used to psychologically manipulate people. The project's methods included using drugs such as LSD on test subjects, as well as various forms of psychological torture and attempts at hypnosis. While the gameplay of Garten of BanBan is clearly a form of psychological torture, I might have written this off as coincidence if not for the inclusion of the tape recording, which would be outdated in 2016. But was extremely popular during the time of MKUltra's existence. However, that's not all. If you still don't believe that BanBan was produced in association with MKUltra, I will now explain the most damning, irrefutable evidence of my claim. As a part of the larger MKUltra project, the CIA outsourced work to one Dr. Donald Cameron, who performed experiments intended to counteract schizophrenia by essentially breaking the mind of the test subjects. These experiments took place in McGill University, located in Montreal, Canada. In Garten of BanBan, the player is able to find two boarding passes for a flight to Madrid. The flight's origin? Montreal. So there is obviously a connection between this game and MKUltra, but what is it exactly? The most obvious theory is that the game was created as a form of torture to use on subjects in the program, but it is unlikely even the CIA had the resources to make a game as graphically advanced as BanBan in the 1970s or earlier. However, a theory I find to be more credible is that the game was made by a victim of MKUltra, specifically the Montreal experiments. If this is true, then some of the seemingly strange choices in the game start to make more sense. The kindergarten depicted in the game is known for not looking much like a kindergarten, but more closely resembles some sort of scientific facility. This setting starts to make much more sense if the game was created by a victim of the MKUltra experiments. The monsters are twisted interpretations of the victims' memories of their experimenters, delusions induced by a constant psychological torment. You might notice that I am referring to the game as being created by a single individual, when it was in fact published by the Euphoric brothers. This is because I believe the game's creator to be schizophrenic. This was either brought on by the trauma of the Montreal experiments, or was the reason they were chosen to be experimented on. As I mentioned earlier, that the main objective of the experiments was to cure schizophrenia. This would also explain why there was a BanBan merch button on the game's main menu as soon as it launched. The developer's schizophrenia likely caused them to imagine that they had a popular fanbase even before they published the game. Even the minute details of the gameplay become more logical when analyzing them from the lens of the MKUltra theory. One of the methods used in the experiments was the repeated playback of tape recordings, which explains the device's presence in the game. The Opila bird's clear state of intoxication can be explained by the use of drugs on other test subjects. Electroshock therapy was also used, which is referenced in the appearance of batteries for the drone seen in-game. The simplistic, childish nature of the puzzles found in BanBan is likely a side effect of a form of anterograde amnesia, which was also a reported effect of the Montreal experiments. This likely caused the developer to effectively be stuck as a child, which would also explain why they act the way they do on Twitter, despite presumably being over 60 years old. So, to summarize, an unknown child was put through the horrific Montreal experiments under MKUltra sometime between 1957 and 1964. Over the course of the experiments, the victim was likely kept in a kindergarten classroom or a similar environment, and were subjected to psychological torment, hallucinogens, and electroshock therapy. This experience left the individual mentally broken, with them likely both having schizophrenia and anterograde amnesia afterward. After Project MKUltra was shut down, it is unknown what the victim did for the next 60 or so years, but they would at some point develop a second personality and take the name Euphoric. In the mid-2010s, they would evidently be exposed to the mascot horror genre, which likely deepened their insanity and caused their memories of the Montreal experiments to become fused with indie horror gameplay. This caused them to develop Garten of BanBan, a twisted creation born out of the schizophrenic delusions of a tortured soul. The most unnerving aspect about the BanBan universe is that the horrors are not only still ongoing, but getting worse. At this time, Garten of BanBan 2 and Garten of BanBan 3 have both been released at a price of $4.99, with the fourth game currently in development. While the release of 2 more peak video games may seem like a blessing to gamers around the world, I have reason to believe that the development and merchandising of the BanBan franchise is part of a massive illegal operation undertaken by the U.S. Internal Revenue Service to collect revenue from non-tax-paying children. The evidence for this can be seen in the voice lines obviously recorded from a hostage held at gunpoint, and the remarkably high polygon count of the characters, which is likely a cover for the game mining cryptocurrency in the background while it is running. With that said, do not harass the developers of Garten of BanBan. It is likely that they are being manipulated by the government into continuing the series, and even if this isn't the case, they are almost certainly a victim of the MKUltra program. While I'm not going to go into detail on these theories right now, always remember the dark story behind Garten of BanBan. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.